It is 10 o'clock, and I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. The chair notes there's the quorum present, and we'll do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, 2.0 is additions and revisions to the agenda. Do you guys have anything?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss whether the meeting's here or not in Arlington.
Okay. Add that. We're going to do that at the very end when we do our announcements. Does that work? Okay. Correspondence and, anything else?
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
Correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court time and at other times throughout the meeting, speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. And for folks who are signing on via Zoom, it's *6 to unmute yourself. For the lower left-hand corner. And then I always let people know that we are very informal here. So as we move through the agenda, if you want to participate or ask questions as we go, we welcome that input. I don't see anybody for public comment at this point, so let's move on to correspondence. There is Paul's quarterly report. Is
Judge
in
Campbell?
here. Yes, go ahead, Les.
Judge Campbell, this is Les Ruhart down by Rock Creek. I hadn't anticipated I'd have the opportunity to join today, but I am obviously. And under the public comment aspect, I'd like to make a request and then let you know or let the court know that I'd also like to chime in somewhat on item 5.3, I guess it is. So
Okay.
Could I make a brief request here at this time?
Oh, of course.
I'm not quite sure how you want to handle this because obviously I'm not a member of the court, but I would like to see the court add to its agenda today, if it hasn't already done that. I may have missed it. Somewhat of an update on your part, as well as perhaps the sheriff's part or other county officials, maybe Chris's part, with respect to the situation involving the ambulance service in Arlington. I'd like to know specifically what the county officials have learned about that to date, and perhaps what they may be thinking of doing to help with that situation. So if you could make sure to put that on the radar or on the discussion for today, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know that Chris Fitz has something in the works, and she is going to be up later to talk about it. And I think Commissioner Shannon's been heavily involved as well. And so, yes, I think when we get to the announcements part, I'm hoping Chris needed a little bit more time to confirm some stuff. But then I think she'll have an update.
Yeah, I would like
next hour or so.
At that point, I would definitely like to suggest something that the court needs to give consideration to in that regard. It's just a really serious situation, and I would definitely hope that the court will be able to take some meaningful and some quick action as a governing body of its own. But be that as it is, I appreciate you allowing me to make that comment, and I'll look forward to being able to say another word or two regarding the EOCA situation.
Sounds good. Thanks, Les. So for correspondence, Paul Conway has his quarterly report for Veterans Services. Again, he just every time he's fantastic. So I'll just do this shout out for folks who are listening in. If you are a veteran or know of a veteran, please consider connecting them with Paul. He's here every Thursday, but works within the 3 counties and is a fantastic resource for all kinds of veteran service benefits. So please reach out to him. He is fantastic and a great advocate. The other thing under correspondence is the certification from our assessor, Chet Wilkins, regarding the homestead rebate program that he has to do every year to certify how much is going out, how many applicants. So for anybody who wants to see the certification or Paul's report, those are always included as part of the court packet, which is on the county's website. Okay, let's move on to consent agenda.
Do you have any questions about the
I do
minutes?
not have
I did not either. I move we approve the consent agenda.
a second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of October 6th, 2021 regular meeting minutes and consider approval of September 29th, 2021 work session minutes. Is there further discussion?
Me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's move on to unfinished business, discussion regarding library storage solution. Okay, so if you guys recall, when we approved the demolition of the Holland and Sons building several months back now, I don't see, I did not see Jeff on there. Maybe he's going to join later. One of the discussion points that we had was making sure that the library had a storage solution for their books for the book sale, and they have some tables and chairs. And so originally we had talked about putting a storage building back there. So I've had discussions with Catherine, who's on the Zoom, as well as Jeff. There's a couple of hurdles to putting a building there. It's in the city's historical district, which means it has a whole another set of things, requirements in terms of what the building needs to look like to be able to be put there. And Jeff also had some concerns about whether we would be able to get the building permits for what we're thinking we would like to put there. So he threw out the idea of what if we just got a sort of cargo or storage trailer, cargo trailer, but then that could be parked there. So it's in the back and it could be moved very easily then if they're wanting to haul their books around to Memorial Hall or wherever. And Mary ran that by the library board and they liked that idea. So I just wanted to get your feedback. Does that sound like the right approach? If so, the trailers are inexpensive enough that they actually don't need to go through us for procurement. It's like $6,000 and it's already been budgeted. So I just need some direction on if you guys are okay with buying the trailer.
I'm just curious, what size trailer do they think they need?
Mary, are you on?
Gib was supposed to get that information to me, and I haven't heard back from him yet.
The reason I would ask is I know that the Arlington Chamber just purchased a cargo trailer for their chairs and tables on it. It was told 10,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, they're on.
Kind of wondering on what's.
So when I
Did you
looked
say
last,
go ahead, Mary.
when I looked last week before leaving for my conference, they were about 50% off right now because they're trying to get rid of the 21 models, making room for 22 models.
That's kind of bizarre because that's not happening in any other part of the industry.
I know, but if you go on their website, they are, because they're trying to move them, I guess.
So if we can look, if it's going to be more than 10, I'll need to bring it back here. If it's less, our procurement allows us to make that purchase without doing bids. Is that the direction? Does that sound like the right direction to go in, a trailer versus a building?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I touched base with Mary, and she indicated that that's what she and the board were interested in, and I think if that's what they feel is the most convenient, that's what we should do.
Okay, so Mary, if you could double check on where the prices are. If it's more than 10,000, we're going to need to get the 3 bids and bring them back to the court. If it's less than 10,000, we can make the procurement without bringing it back to the court.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll circle back with you later and let me know what you find out.
Okay.
Eric?
To consider city ordinances and parking stuff
Okay,
where it's going to be stored.
into play. Did you hear that, Mary?
No.
Sheriff Betancourt was just noting that we'll just want to make sure that wherever you park it, that we're mindful of city ordinances regarding where it can be parked. So we'll want to just touch base with the sheriff's office about that, or Catherine.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Are we good on this one?
Good.
Okay, let's move on to discussion regarding Association of Oregon Counties, AOC County Solutions, ARPA Funds Investment. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Good.
It's good to see you outside of AOC. Welcome to Condon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So good morning, Judge Farrar, Commissioner Wilkins, and Commissioner Shannon. So I've met you, Commissioner, in person. I don't know if we've been in the same room, Commissioners. I'm guessing we've been on calls before.
Probably several.
Several, yeah.
So delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So my name is, for the record, Andy Smith. I work for the Association of Oregon Counties, and in particular, I work for the County Solutions Program. So a lot of our AOC staff, of course, works in the legislative arena. We work with the legislature on policy and budget issues on your behalf, and all of our counties are members, 36 counties. But a little bit about the County Solutions Program quickly, and then I think you want to talk about water today. So I want to kind
Well,
of.
you've got water and housing, right?
I do. Both of those I'll put on the table, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, what you're working on, and catch you up what we might be able to offer, or at least share some opportunities with you. But the County Solutions Program is about, I've talked about this at County College and other places. There are really 3 different avenues. So one is a convening to support judges and commissioners as conveners, meaning situations where you have a problem or an opportunity, and one or a couple of you and maybe somebody else in your community would convene a table of discussion that would cross over perhaps a public and private sector boundary, maybe involve other community nonprofits, profits, businesses. That table could be whatever it needs to be to address a problem that just clearly isn't kind of in one lane. It would cross over and be something like that where you can play a convening role. We also do, we call it technical assistance, but that's kind of a neutral phrase for helping you. Perhaps it's something we know a little bit about. Maybe our policy team, maybe me, have some access to resources, or we can connect you to things either directly, or oftentimes we use a contractor. We find somebody that you might need that maybe has done something in another county, and we can help with a kind of a capacity issue. And that's nice because it's very flexible. It doesn't bind you to anything. It doesn't bind us to anything. It can kind of be zeroed in on what you might need. And then the other, so those are convening, kind of technical assistance capacity. The other thing we do is we kind of at a level of innovation. We try to spark things that might help counties tackle problems, perhaps in housing. A good example is something called Project Turnkey. And Project Turnkey was you weren't a fire affected county, or I don't know about the last fire, 2 summers ago, but you could certainly have fires. But in the pandemic, or even without the pandemic, housing issues seem to be an issue in every county across Oregon. So I'm guessing that may be an issue here. But anyway, Project Turnkey was, it was kind of came from nothing, but it allowed counties to apply, counties and nonprofit partners to maybe take an unused, like if you had a motel property, to turn that into housing through a very quick procurement through an organization called Oregon Community Foundation. So it was a partnership between the state, local government, and that entity to take applicants and say, hey, if you have housing needs, perhaps you have an asset, something like that. It could be an older building. It doesn't have to be a motel, but they were almost in the first round of funding statewide. It was about $75 million, but that happened. It didn't happen in John Day. It almost happened there, but it did happen in Pendleton. It happened number of medium and smaller counties, Coos County, Benton County. So we didn't want it to be just, and we almost had some traction out in Malheur. But the current round of funding, we got it out into communities of all sizes, that was kind of innovation is the third area that County Solutions does. We kind of try to bring people together to do something different to address that housing issue. So, for some reason, I thought in Arlington at one point there was a motel on that list that was under consideration. I thought there might have been, but I don't know how far it got in discussions, but I just throw that out there from memory.
Don't remember.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what it was, but people were trying. I don't know how many
Yeah,
properties.
usually
That
old.
was kind of dilapidated motel set up with units that hadn't been occupied for a long, long time. And I think it's always been a problem.
Yeah.
It looked like it was available for something, but it may have been in discussions on it.
So I don't know how far it got, but some properties, sometimes the hotel was in decent condition and people that needed housing, they could move right in for services, whether they had mental health issues, whether they were chronically homeless for other reasons. But sometimes they could do improvements. So, I mean, I just throw everybody's a little bit different. So anyway, that Project Turnkey was something different. It's an example of we could try something different that could be applied to counties that have needs. So maybe it's never been done before. It's something you want to try. So, but I'm here today because we do think my boss, Gina, she was a former commissioner back in the 90s, but she's been in local government really for a long time, most of her career, about 30 some years. She started listening to counties during the pandemic. The housing issue and water were ones she continued to hear as housing, immediately everywhere. She heard it come up, whether it be kind of for workforce or they call it missing middle housing, just a lack across the board. Issues around capacity and contracting, issues around land use, issues around, you could share what your particular challenges are here, but across Oregon, everybody seems to have a housing problem. It's not just quote affordable housing, although that's significant. It's also housing for people with mental illness or addictions issues. But in addition, just people, working families, there just isn't that creation of housing stock that seems to be needed. The other one, water, is something that counties are becoming more interested in. We have a couple of commissioners that are jumping into something we're called local water needs forums. They're discussions around water. And I'd like to hear more about your situation here today. I know you've had a place-based water initiative. I don't know if you've been part of that, but that was convened, can't remember, I think the water district, and then there was another co-convener for that. But so that's certainly an example that we don't want to complicate or get in front of, but we at AOC, we are bringing aboard a contractor that would be available to counties that want to invest. So it's not free, but it is kind of a model that we could take this person's time and move it much farther because counties would be sharing this resource around water planning. So that could be tailored to whatever you might need. But I didn't bring her today because she hasn't quite started, but her name is Harmony Barite, is the staff we're bringing aboard. But Harmony used to work for the state agents, one of the state agencies that does water, Oregon Water Resources Department. But she has an exceptional background. It really understands local planning around water in particular, but she understands a community-based model. So we're excited we don't have to do it today, but Harmony could come back. We could talk with you together about needs and kind of interview if you have water needs, how could it be tailored? In other words, she has a skill set to be a staff person to facilitate. Maybe it's a bigger convening, maybe it's not, maybe it's a particular allocation of rights issue, maybe it's infrastructure, maybe it's help kind of aligning for federal infrastructure investments. There's going to potentially water, it's wastewater treatment money and clean drinking water in the current infrastructure bill that every jurisdiction, my understanding, would be eligible for generally, their criteria. But to get some of that, you might need somebody like Harmony to help you understand that if that passes from Congress. But the main message today, commissioners, I'd love to hear more from you on water and or housing to start a conversation. We don't have to, but if you're at all interested, what I'd like to do is open that door. Harmony is our key staff. So she's the specialist. I'm kind of help guide you to a resource. And it's really only if something looks like a value added proposition for you. So it's not meant to be something if you don't want to use it, that's just fine. But, you know, it's not something we offer some things kind of for free, but you know, if it's a longer term thing, it would be some kind of investment on water. And housing is similar. We're getting close to bringing board on a contract basis. She used to work at a number of places, but a couple of years ago, she was the state housing agency person. But she has a local eye for problem solving. She very much understands the role of cities and counties, local government together to tackle housing. But she has a lot of technical expertise around project development. Financing is very complex, as you may know, for housing, especially when it involves federal, or not federal, but they're bonding tax credits, and your federal, they're called low-income LIHTC, and there's another one. They're financing mechanisms to create affordable housing, but it's a very complex housing arena. So a lot of jurisdictions can't really access some of that money, but she's trying to help think, maybe you can, maybe you can't. How do you match you with a developer? If you had a property, maybe it's not as big, but how do you get somebody to come help you do that in a community of this size and scale? But we really think that she's just probably starting in January. She's a consultant now, but she used to work in the public realm. So I'll stop there, and I'd really love to hear more, just some initial thoughts or questions or needs about housing and or water.
And, you know, and I had a discussion with you that our concern initially when the first communication came out, the email was that it was $25,000 a year for us, the same as it would be for Multnomah County. And the fairness in that fee was kind of why we just decided that we didn't get enough ARPA funds to really go down that road. We had talked about that. But, is Mayor Buxton on?
I don't see him on there.
I had asked him to attend, and I do know that in Arlington, they're looking and working on a project through their engineer, actually transferring some water that's at the golf course, well water that's in the golf course into the city system, and then they have water rights out of the Columbia River that they would like to move to the golf course. So it's a significant project that they're looking at, and then they're also at capacity on their wastewater treatment facility, just because someday we'll have more residents that got it, and it's old, so it will upgrade. So those two things I know locally are big. There's also another well on North County that the state has said needs to be recased. It's a high producing well that would obviously make some more water available for possibly industry, or could be even piped to those city itself or back up. So there's some stuff definitely on the north end. I did talk to Catherine about it. I know there's been some conversations up here about water at the airport.
Catherine, you on?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What?
So we're talking about water issues and just identifying potentially if there's needs within the cities to look at usage, you know, position us potentially for outside for federal funds. Do you, and Pat was just mentioning the airport, the getting water to the airport. Is there anything that you see for the city of Condon?
So I'm guessing you're talking about infrastructure, not necessarily the availability of water, correct? Such as pipes in the ground.
Are we also looking at availability? Andy's shaking his head that we're also looking at availability.
So right now we have no issue with availability, knock on wood, even through the drought. Our public works have done a good job of managing the wells. Infrastructure, we will always need help with infrastructure as we are increasing housing. The water to the airport, even though that is a, you're using city water, that would be a county project because it is outside of city limits.
And then in terms of housing, we definitely, that is an issue for sure. We are actually going to be convening on the 3rd of November, a work session to talk more about housing. The county made, just so you have some background, Andy, the county made a pretty significant investment several years ago that one of our nonprofits is managing some incentive funds. And so we're going to be meeting on the 3rd to talk about how that program is working and whether we need to make some tweaks to it. The city of Condon has been very aggressive in trying to figure out how to bring additional housing. And so I know in one particular case, Catherine, do you want to talk just a little bit about the golf course project? Because I do know we've been talking about needing some technical assistance on that.
Yeah, so I probably need to back up. One of our projects right now that is just coming online is we have a housing project on the old school's baseball field that we are selling to a developer, but our point was to get the infrastructure to that. And what we learned going through that process is not only getting the infrastructure in, but replatting the lots. There's been quite the planning issues that we've had to go through to get that, even though it's in a residential neighborhood, it was zoned public. So we've had quite a process, an expensive process to get the infrastructure to that. So as we move up to the baseball field or to the golf course housing, what we're encountering there is, again, we're zoned correctly, residential 1, but no infrastructure is up there. No lots have been surveyed or platted. So that also is going to be a pretty expensive process to get it through. We have applied to DLCD for a grant for technical assistance for up to $30,000 to get us through the council through the process of making sure our code is going to support the type of housing we're anticipating up there. And also, but it won't pay for any of the infrastructure that we need to put into the ground. So, and that is going to be, and I should say the infrastructure into the ground, we have just issued a contract. The infrastructure we're getting to the site, and it's 9.3 acres up there. We have it getting water and sewer will get to the site, but not within the site, which is going to be the super expensive part.
Commissioner, more feedback you want to give to Andy on our needs?
I was hoping Jeff would be on there, but he can talk more specifically to what they're doing in Arlington. But yeah, I don't have anything specific in needs that
It just sounds to me like the two things for Arlington go together, the water and the housing, because without the increase in the water, then the housing suffer as well, and the surge treatment plant capacity as well.
there's not anything aggressively going on developed, but there is a project going on where they're going to have a meeting with the developer on Green Bear, who's looking at some renewable energy projects in the county, and they've included developers in discussion about housing, but we haven't had any deep dive meetings on that yet. There's one scheduled for Arlington.
So as next steps, I kind of feel like, at least on the water side, that's maybe more of a North City of Arlington kind of need. Does that sounds right? Would it make some sense once your contractor is sort of on board and has her feet underneath her? Pat, what if like maybe you and Mayor Buffton hopped on a Zoom with Andy and their consultant to just
looks like hold his hand through it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And then if after he speaks with them, if he feels like that would be a benefit, then we could look at and talk to Andy about what a county investment might look like if the mayor and the city council there felt like it was could be a resource that they need. Because it's really their water rights. So I feel like we can't really speak on
Sure.
their behalf, but if they think it would be a benefit, I would be willing to make an investment.
Exactly, yeah, certainly.
Does that sound? And then in terms of housing, like I said, we're having this meeting on the 3rd, so maybe that will give us a little bit more information on what we may need on that piece, that we could circle back and see if there's something that would fit. Does that make sense for next steps?
Yes.
Do you have more questions? Does that sound?
That sounds great. I
Okay.
think, I want to make sure you do know the cost or the price is not, it's open to what you need. So the needs forms are something kind of particular. It involves a fair amount of work, and it, you know, if that's not something that fits now, that's not something we would push. It's really if it fits. But if there's another piece like you talked about, I mean, there is no price. It's really kind of, you know, it's what Harmony, what we could match her up to do for you.
Got it, okay.
And the same would be with housing. That it kind of like, what do you need? What could we connect? And, you know, it's meant to be as lean as we can make it. It's not really it can be as kind of short term or as medium or long term as you want it to be.
Okay. Is there a time frame that you guys are looking to have? I'm thinking you have 36 counties that potentially could be asking for her time. So
Yeah.
How are you sort of managing when we all come to the table the same month and say, okay, we're ready?
Well, I think that's a good question. So for the water, we have 4 counties that are kind of right out the gate. They're going to be doing over the next, we're calling the needs forms. And we think there'll be another 6 to 8 counties that will do that. But we're trying to, what we want to try to be done with these are community engagement processes that involve a lot of outreach and engagement, and then actual forums, listening, that Harmony's going to get busy. She will. So I think to the degree you could get, and she's great. I mean, she could come in and help you think through what you need or don't need and carve out a plan for you, whether she's involved or not. But I think the sooner that you have that conversation with her, it'll be easier for her because, you know, she's on a contract basis. She has a family, you know, a young child. So at some point she will hit I want to help, but I can't. You know, she's not there now, but I do think that's a good question. On the housing side, our contractor, we're getting her at a good time because she's coming off. I just met with Margaret the other day. But again, a couple counties are diving in a lot, and Clatsop County is an example, but they want a big chunk of her time because they have a couple of projects they just need to develop and they don't have staff. They own dirt, and that dirt's been sitting there for, I don't know, probably a decade or more, and they just can't get it off the ground. So I do advise, you know, the sooner we can match up and have conversations, it's a good idea. Okay. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I do think these are good staff people to the degree. I think the most important piece is that we find this time to connect and do that mini assessment, what's on the ground, because somebody like Margaret, like on your housing, I think pretty quickly could say, hey, these are my initial thoughts. These seem to be your challenges. This is what I think you need. So it might be just affirming what you know, which is good sometimes, but it also might be these are the pieces, and she can either do them or tell you how you do them. But it just seems like it's a great initial conversation to have. But we're happy to do it as quickly as you'd like after the 3rd.
Okay. Catherine, I saw that you turned your thing back on.
I guess what I'm coming in a little late on the conversation is this money that's coming down the pike. We already have a master plan for water. We have a master plan for sewer. The technical assistance part on a lot of that, we need construction dollars. And I am kind of hoping that the county, and I'm assuming because Arlington has the same engineers that we do, that I believe they also have a master plan possibly for water and sewer. And I know they're working on another water project that I'm unfamiliar with. But what I'm hoping is instead of this money going into a joint pool for something that we already have, because we've already done a housing assessment, we already have the other master plans, that the money stays here and is used for construction on these projects.
Feedback.
I'm all for working together, but I just am not sure that we haven't already have these steps in place.
Okay.
Thanks.
Got it. Thanks, Catherine. Other feedback for Andy?
I think we need to to the housing, and I need to reach out to City of Arlington to get them hooked up.
That sounds good.
They're in the process of hiring a new city superintendent as well. So
Right,
that's-
they've got some more transition going on right now, so.
Okay. So Pat will be circling back with you about, and then once we have our meeting on the 3rd, I think we can figure out next steps on housing and see if there's a need, but I think water at Arlington is maybe the place to start.
Me too.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so
Andy.
much
And
for
I'd
coming
be
in.
remiss not to extend, conference. People are signing up. I don't know if you can come to our EOC conference. Okay,
Pat's gonna come. I may be there for a day, but I have a baby too. A new
Okay,
baby,
okay.
so.
so yeah, because for many of our commissioners and judges and chairs, they haven't seen each other. That social component is just really missing. So I think we've had 2 meetings in person since the pandemic, but this would be the first kind of big gathering. If it works and people feel safe and comfortable, hope to see people there.
Commissioner Shannon, for sure, will be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be there for maybe a day or 2.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andy.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, let's move on to 5.3, which is discussion regarding Eastern Oregon Counties Association membership. So we had discussed this during the last meeting, paying the membership dues for EOCA. When we were discussing it, we thought that it was 10 to 12,000, and that is partially true. The truth is that the base is 2,500, and then there's options to pay an additional 5 to 10, depending on if we wanted to do so. Since the last meeting, we had received an email from Les just expressing concerns over the process that we had used to decide to become a member, and asked us to actually bring it back. And so, and either do a formal vote or however we want to do it. And then just as comparison, we also put in there as an FYI, our dues to AOC are at 8,500, roughly just over 8,500. So that gives you scale. So I don't know, Les, I know you said that you wanted to ask, maybe we'll start there and do Les's questions. Les, did you want to raise some things about EOCA membership?
Yes, I appreciate it, Judge Campbell. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Let me just preface a couple my comment here by saying that I take no issue with actually joining the Eastern Oregon Counties Association. I just want to make sure that there is as I see it anyway, a genuine attempt to build a record for having done that, and more importantly, for asking some questions going forth here, as I believe the county does need to do. And I did have a concern, quite frankly, when I heard that $12,000 figure, and obviously Pat had since communicated to me that had been corrected and it's been downsized some, but at that level it would have been $2,000 more than what the county pays for its AOC membership. At this point, it's probably somewhere around $4,000 less than it pays for the AOC membership. And I think you need to weigh that a little bit, because with AOC, you're talking about a number of resources that you get for the dollar gets for its bang. And I'm just kind of hoping that we're getting that same bang out of the membership with the Eastern Oregon Counties Association. Having said that, let me just say that in terms of offering up some additional comment here, other than what I included in that email that you've provided as part of the agenda support material, I think it's really important that the court be asking some questions here that they need to actually end up getting the answers to. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying that you need to have those answers before you join, but I would hope that you guys would work towards putting them out there as soon after as possible. And essentially, I've got 7 in front of me that I've kind of written down in rough form here. First is, how is the group actually structured? To me, it's not clear whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a 190 of some sort, or whatnot. At this point, it just appears that it's been organized by all of the counties that have joined it for the purpose of advocating primarily at the legislature for the interests that they see that are in the better interest of Eastern Oregon itself. And I just think that Gilliam County needs to make sure it's aware of how the group is structured so that it has an idea of what it may be taking on in terms of potential liability by joining. Two, the second question I have is, how are the monies that the dues are a part of that are paid by the member counties, how are they actually spent? In other words, isn't there some way that the county that's administering the group at this point, I believe it's Union County, could identify for those that are interested, what percentage of the county member dues actually end up covering the administrative costs of keeping the entity in place and doing what it wants to do, and what percentage are used for lobbying, that is the legislature or Congress too. Third question is, how is the group's legislative agenda actually determined? The internal, I think there needs to be some sort of a better identification of what the internal decision-making process is for that. It's somewhat obvious to me anyway that it's pretty basic in that it's essentially sort of decision-making that's reached by consensus of those that are participating in the actual meetings. But I think it might need to be a little bit more than that. And most importantly, as I'm looking at the legislative agenda that the group comes up with, how open and accessible to that is that process to the public? In other words, what opportunities does the public have in real time? What opportunities do they have to learn of how that legislative agenda is being arrived at, and then more importantly taken to Salem and to Washington, D.C. in some instances? Fourth question I have is, as more of a comment, I think since the initial meeting of the group I think it was in Union County a year or two ago, that sort of made the headlines for there not being the proper notice of it issued that there needed to be. Since then, the group has come a long ways. They're issuing some pretty decent, or their noticing of their meetings is pretty decently issued. They have a really they have a website that is accessible to the public. You can learn about the meetings and whatnot. However, I don't think it's as complete as it needs to be, in that there are not any minutes that I could find as of yesterday anyway, or any meeting notes of the various meetings that they have held. And I'm just thinking that one thing the county needs to try to work towards, if it does join, which I'm assuming it will, going forward, is it needs to make sure there's a better record building of the minutes of the meetings that are occurring and the decision making that's occurring. And the fifth question I have is, who are the principal ones out of all of the counties that are involved at this point that are doing the lobbying in Salem? My impression is it's probably State Rep Owens to some degree and others, and the county commissioners from Harney County, I suppose. But the reason I ask that is because it's a hard one to sort of button up a little bit here, but the threshold requirements of being a lobbyist, I think you're beginning to, the group is triggering those thresholds, and I'm wondering how come there isn't, some of the commissioners anyway, registered with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission as they need to be as lobbyists. I'd like to learn who's actually doing the lobbying on behalf of EOCA in Salem. I can't very easily learn that readily on my own at this point. Then two more questions. The sixth one I have is, doesn't the group now, or doesn't it plan in the future to advocate for maybe time and dollars to supporting candidates or initiative campaigns? And if it does, it's going to need to be registered as a PAC. And I'm wondering, before Gilliam County steps into its membership, it needs to know whether it's going to need to be, or whether by joining the EOCA it becomes a member of a PAC. Final question I have here, and I appreciate you allowing me the time to put these forth here, is what effort is going to be put forth by the group overall to more or less disclose, say, on an annual basis, finances? In other words, some kind of an auditing situation that commissioners from each of the counties that are members can be made aware of. I think in raising these 7 questions, I'm not trying to present stumbling blocks or make it all that more a convoluted situation, or make it a convoluted situation, or inhibit the work of the group, because I know that a lot of it depends on, at this point, more or less a voluntary type, consensus type arrangement going forward. But I think it's really important, given that the county is expending public dollars to become a member of this group, that where those dollars end up going and for what purposes, I think there needs to be a better accounting of. And that's bottom line, I guess, where I'm coming from in that. I hope I've made a little bit of sense here, and I appreciate you guys taking a step backwards here to make sure that there was more of a record building than there was at the previous county court meeting, where it was just then added to the agenda item and sort of passed off on without a real discussion of it. And I think there may not have been quite a real discussion of joining AOC over the years, but I think that's an entity, a standalone entity, as Andy well knows, that provides a whole mess of resources for the dollars involved. And I think it's going to be important for the county court to be able to justify to the average voter in Gilliam County that by joining this group, and for probably other groups down the road here as we get into things, that we're going to get a return on our investment that we can actually justify. I think we can justify it, but there definitely needs to be that comprehensive decision making to do that. Again, thank you.
Thanks, Les. Pat, do you know some of those?
He's into the details of the structure of UAC, and for me, it's been a relationship building with communities and counties that have similar situations as we do on the east side of Oregon, and it's been a good process for me to go through as a new commissioner, being involved in it, and I support the thinking. So I see that you've got fees on there for the Eastern Oregon Economic Summit. You talked about attending that, and so yeah, I just stand by. I'd like to see the dues paid. That I'm participating, I'm getting a lot out of it. I believe there's a lot of the constituents in Gilliam County that would support that, or I wouldn't be here. And so that's where I'm.
And I think one of the discussions we had with the previous court was we didn't feel at that time that they were representing what our county was as much as the timber counties and that sort of thing. But from what I've seen and read and what their agendas have been, they've evolved more into what this side of the state is, being more interested in our county and what those shared issues are. So I think they're evolving a little bit from what they started out to be or what they've been in the past.
Interesting on the redistricting and the conversations that were along with that. And there is some impact with redistricting that affects, the number of people that get to make a say. So, and I don't completely understand it in detail, but there has been some changes within the redistricting that's on play right now, but it's going to be contested, and it's because of fairness to the east side of the state versus the west side of the state. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think, I do think, as the points that Les is making, I think, are perhaps good ones for us to raise with them, because I do think, I mean, just from sitting on like AOC's Ledge Committee, for instance, there's very defined rules about who has a vote, how, you know, when AOC backs something or doesn't back something. And so I think Les's suggestion that we ask EOCA to maybe look at formalizing some of those procedures, they may already, and I'm just not aware of it. Just so that we're clear, I mean, I think the presumption is that most of the counties are probably going to agree most of the time on the east side. But I would just want to make sure that we're not getting into a situation where, and I can't even think of a scenario where this might happen, but for instance, where we're a member to something, to an organization that's advocating for something that is harmful to us, you know, but at least having a way to make sure that we have votes and things like that that are, you know, that it's a democratic process within that organization. You know, it's not just whoever shows up gets to make the decision kind of thing. I think it might be worthwhile for us suggesting that to them if they don't already have that in place.
I don't have a problem with that.
So with that, do you guys, I'm thinking just to put something on the record to Les's point, that if we wanted to join, that we would look to just have a motion, and then once the motion is made, then we can just pay the invoice.
My question is, you know, the base commitment for just a membership for Pat, you know, to participate. I am on the email and I do read their minutes and, you know, and see what the agenda items are and that sort of thing, but I haven't actually attended. And they haven't had a Zoom platform recently, so what I saw there was, it said no Zoom. So
It's all been Zoom.
okay, well, I'm missing that. I guess maybe I
It is-
need to look
it is
into that. If we
all
become a member, I should
Since
look into that.
January when I was sworn in, it was all been Zoom.
Okay, well, I missed that because that's not what I read was different. So anyway, the $2,500 is the base membership. So we're talking about, you know, it could be up to, and I know the Eastern Oregon Economic Summit, what they were showing, you know, was going to be presented and was of value to us in all kinds of ways. And that's why I was interested in it, because it was housing and
Right.
water and all kinds of things.
Which are all the discussions that happen
Right.
continually throughout every meeting that I've been in. But, yeah, and I think that, I mean, that is obviously what you want to contribute. 5,000 recommended, and whether you contribute or not, I don't think you're not. But, and my main thought was the 2,500 for the membership.
Yeah. That's the big deal.
Okay, is there appetite to make a motion?
So how would we formulate that motion based on?
So I think you could just say that we would be, or do you want me to make the motion?
Well, yeah, okay.
Okay. I
It
can.
really, it's contingent on.
So I think what you're discussing is that we would be moving to join the Eastern Oregon Counties Association and authorizing payment of the membership invoice for the basic membership amount in the amount of $2,500. Does that sound right? Okay, that'll be my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we join the Eastern Oregon Counties Association and that we pay the membership invoice in the amount, or for the basic membership in the amount of $2,500. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's move on to 5.4. I see lots of people, I think, that are probably here for this discussion. This is the discussion regarding Gilliam County Public Health. So where we last left it, for those who have not been part of this conversation, back in March, I'll give the whole history so public can follow along. Back in March, the county court approved funding a feasibility study to explore the feasibility of bringing public health services back to Gilliam County from North Central Public Health District. We then followed up on September 29th and held a work session in Arlington to discuss the initial findings of the study and to start a conversation with the public about the idea of transferring public health back. At the time, we sort of took an informal poll, and the public's input was that we should continue the discussion, that they were interested in having us continue down this path. On October 6th, we reviewed the final public health feasibility study, which, by the way, for those who are interested, that is on the county court's website under the packet for that meeting. During that time, basically, we had decided that our next step was to ask for an opinion from legal counsel regarding our options for partnering with South Gilliam County Health District. And so I asked for that opinion from Carrie Connolly, who is our attorney out of Local Government Law Group in Eugene. And so the purpose of today is for me to let you know what she told me, and then to continue to receive input from the public, and then talk about what steps, if any, are next steps. And I also just wanted to note for the record that we've got several people. I see Shelley on here from North Central Public Health District. And then we also, is it Dana that's from OHA? Hi, welcome.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I'm Dana Drum. I'm the local and tribal public health manager at the Oregon Health Authority Public Health Division.
Great, thank you. And Shelley, do you want to introduce who's on from North Central Public Health? Just so we know.
Thank you for having us. I'm Shelley Campbell. I'm the director here at North Central Public Health. And we have some staff members here as well. Gloria, who is our office manager, Martha McGinnis, who is our clinical program supervisor. Rita Meyer is our finance manager. I'm looking to see who else might be on here. And really, we're here to maybe answer any questions that you might have that we could help with.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. Okay, so let me get to my notes from my conversation with Carrie. 1 second. Okay, so Carrie took a look at, there was an initial email that South Gilliam had received from OHA about how the organization could look. And so I asked Carrie to review that and to interpret for us. And basically her take is that if we wanted to move forward in a partnership, we would have to do it by creating an intergovernmental agency. So we would have to go ahead and create an ORS 190, similar to how we created North Central Public Health. So that would be the same process. Yeah, because she is saying, she said, if South Gilliam County Health District is already an intergovernmental agency, which it is not, it's a special district, then it would already have public health authority. It does not, because it's a special district. So she said, basically because of that, because they're not able to, we're not able to delegate our authority via just a service IGA. We'd actually have to do a standalone entity and then work through how that entity would interact with South Gilliam Health District.
What's the difference in that in Wheeler County? Because theirs is not set up that way.
No, they're still doing it through county court. And they take care of all the financials of the court, and then.
So is their public health director a Wheeler County employee then, technically?
I believe so.
Yeah, and perhaps I could speak to that.
That would be great.
So I'm just looking, I am actually not certain that you could, I think we would need to have more conversation with the Department of Justice around the ORS 190 and what that would look like for Gilliam County. With Wheeler County, they have a contract with the health center there to do some of the work. But the health administrator is a county employee. The local public health administrator has to be a government employee. And so that is the piece that is really critical, because these are governmental functions. So, you know, I think if you're wanting to explore the 190 route, I think we would want to have our DOJ attorney talk with your county council to make sure that that is set up in the way that it would need to be set up. I think the other thing I just want to, yeah, and I will just also say, we don't have a single county that has actually done an ORS 190. Typically, that would be what is done when there's a health district of multiple counties, like you're a part of. So I think, you know, this would be a potentially different arrangement.
How does, out of curiosity, because I know county contracts with community counseling solutions for their public health, how does that look? Do they still have a public health administrator that's a Grant County employee? Do you know that?
Yes, so Kimberly Lindsay in Grant County, part of her time is as a county employee, a paid county employee. Not all of her time, but a portion of it is. Because there are governance functions that local public health does that can only be done by a governmental employee. It cannot be done by a nonprofit or, you know, some other organization.
So basically, the 32 counties that have their own local authority have a county employee.
Yeah, well, I mean, most counties have their own, most counties, the local public, all the local public health sits within the county government. And there are, so I'm just having to, so Curry and Wallowa counties have transferred their local public health authority to the state. We have the one health district, which is North Central, and then everything else is within the county, although the county may be contracting for a large portion or a smaller portion of the public health services that they're able to do that for. But all of them have a public health administrator who is at least partially, the public health administrator in that role is a government employee.
And is that the only employee? I remember when we were going through the feasibility study that is it a medical director? Is that the right term?
There's the public health officer would, that you can contract for, but it needs to be really clear that that person is accountable to the public health administrator.
Got it, okay.
So, and then the other piece I think I ought to also just kind of chime in about is the fiscal piece. So one of the things that did give us concern about what was in the feasibility study is that while the South Gilliam Health Center could do some of the fiscal work, the county would ultimately, if the county was the local public health authority, would ultimately be responsible for all the fiscal oversight and monitoring that the health center's work. OHA would not do that. We would monitor the county and see how you are monitoring that subrecipient, because they would most likely be considered a federal subrecipient. So there are significant legal and fiscal responsibilities on the county if you go this route. So, and then lastly, the only other thing I want to mention is that Andrew Epstein, who works on our team, did a lot of work and consultation with the folks who worked on the feasibility study. We did feel like he got a little bit misinterpreted. While, you know, we would not say that 6 months is an ideal sort of timeline to make this kind of transition. I think what his intent was that, you know, we could do the contractual pieces over probably a period of 6 months, but our experience of counties that have made significant changes in how they're providing public health is that it takes much longer than that. it is a process, from getting staff on board, people trained, getting the fiscal pieces set up. I think for you all, it would be kind of untangling sort of the funding and how whatever the pieces are related to your agreement with North Central Public Health District, and our experience with a few counties that have done this, it has taken much longer than 6 months to do this and do it well.
Okay.
So I just want to be really really real with you about it. That there are pieces that are significant that have to be considered.
Commissioners, do you have questions for OHA?
I guess just on the last statement, why does it, what are the pieces that take so long? What causes it to take so long?
Some of it is just getting staff on board. It looks like you're looking at a very small staff, so the public health administrator is likely to play multiple roles. That means they're going to be responsible for multiple programs. So just getting them up to speed on that. I think we've seen that it just takes time to just do the transition from whoever the previous public health entity was, or who was providing the services, to the folks, to whoever's doing it next. There are all kinds of things around equipment and records and record retention, and there are a lot of those pieces. Also, if you are thinking about something like WIC, there's a lot of time that goes into making sure that just the transition for those clients is smooth and everything is in place for those services to be delivered. That's a program that I think would be hard for Gilliam County to do on its own based on just the funding that you would receive. It would be about $12,000 a year for the WIC program, and it is a highly regulated program that requires multiple roles that would have to be sort of figured out how that can be configured. So there are a lot of intricacies in sort of setting up these various programs and making sure they're ready to go and it's done as seamlessly as possible. Also for communicable disease investigation, that requires training and figuring out how that's going to be done. The places where we've seen a public health administrator take that work on, particularly during this pandemic, it's virtually impossible because it's so much work versus all the other work that has to be done for public health.
Additional questions?
Judge Campbell, would you entertain an interested person asking a question or two?
Go ahead, Les.
Les Ruark, Rock Creek. Dana, I have three basic questions that I know that from your experience you might be able to address here the better. First off, given in mind that the current configuration of things, that being North Central Public Health District, is pretty unique in and of itself, are you aware of any other counties around the state that have attempted to do what Gilliam County is looking at doing at this point versus what's happening in Curry and County? And then also the other question I had was, I'm not sure exactly how to ask this, but given the modernization program or effort that the state just went through over the last several years here, where Commissioner Tammy Bainey, former commissioner from Deschutes County, chaired, what were some of the components out of that might be applicable here? And then the third question I had was, are you able to disclose who would be the assigned counsel from DOJ that would end up talking to the county's council? Those are the three interests I have. Thank you.
So regarding the DOJ attorney, I'm not certain, just because with the pandemic and the amount of work, we're working with several attorneys there, so I don't know which would be assigned to this. Regarding arrangements in other counties, so Wheeler, of course, you've mentioned, Grant, you've mentioned, where basically there's subcontracts out. Lake County does that as well. Columbia County, actually, interestingly, like they had contracted most of their services, and over the last few years, most, if not all of those services are now or will soon be all under the county government. So, and then Curry, before Curry transferred, they, in February of 2020, had they had been subcontracting and brought it back under the county and ended their relationship with their contractor, and then recently transferred because I think that transition was just really it was difficult. So so there are a variety of of this model. But they all, and I would just say all of them, we've had to do significant work around those legal and fiscal responsibilities to make sure things are set up in a way that there's appropriate monitoring of the subcontractor.
Hey, if you're able, on the modernization aspect of things, wasn't there something out of the effort the legislature signed off on that I'm trying to just recall it in my own mind with your help, I guess. So the idea about public health modernization, one of the things is that, communities need to decide what's going to be best for their community in terms of meeting the public health needs. But I think, there's also a component in sort of the original work related to public health modernization is, how can we work across the system to be more efficient and more effective in the work? And that, that may look different in different places, that, there are going to be some places where it makes a lot of sense for the public health authority for all the functions to be done by the local government. And there may be other places where it makes sense for counties to work together. Either sort of formally, like North Central does, or on particular programs and sharing of staff for particular things. So, and it's also, really focused on kind of the core basic public health work that, only governmental public health can do. And then some really foundational work. And then as community needs require, looking at sort of what are the other pieces beyond that need to be in place in terms of, meeting those specific community public health needs. Judge Campbell, may I ask one last question, then I'll lay low.
Les, go ahead.
Dana, bottom line, can you just identify, and I'm thinking of asking this not just for my own info, but perhaps others that might be interested also, but can you identify what the current oversight is that OHA itself has, and then as it's been proposed by Gilliam County at this point, going to the South Gilliam Health District Board versus a 190, assuming that would be something that could happen, as has been thought of at least up to now, what actual oversight does OHA have in those circumstances?
So the Oregon Health Authority has oversight for all local public health authorities in the sense that we provide funding to those local public health authorities, and that public health intergovernmental agreement kind of outlines what those what the counties are, or what the local public health authorities should be doing or have to do with the funding. So each of those funding streams that are mentioned, the program elements that were mentioned on that list in the report, each of those comes with strings attached regarding what the work is that has to be done. A lot of that money is federal money. So, and then every 3 years, we do what's called a triennial review, where we go in and review the LPHA, all of those funding streams, making sure that the work has been done, that they're obligated to do. And then if there are findings, we also review the fiscal work that's done. So that's where we would be reviewing, the subrecipient monitoring, as well as, various controls and those kinds of things. There is a statute, to my knowledge, we've never exercised it, but if we had a situation where, we had a situation where the public health administrator was not fulfilling their duties as outlined by Oregon statute, OHA theoretically under the statute has the ability to step in. But as I said, that's not something we've ever exercised, that to my knowledge, certainly not in my many years of being here at the Public Health Division. Does that answer your
Judge
question?
Campbell, it does. I need to ask just one final thing. That last reference you made to the state stepping in terms of a public health administrator's duties, would that apply to an actual district at this point that's not attempting any type of modification to its structure? If, in other words, could the state step in and provide a temporary administrator for a health district?
No, that we wouldn't. No, that's not something we would do. If the no.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate your flexibility here.
Other questions for OHA? Anything? Any members of the public have comments or questions? Go ahead.
I was just wondering, you made a great point about the difficulty in kind of going from one organization running public health to a different organization. And you brought up, and I think Les asked the question, but I think you answered it in a different way than I was thinking he was asking. And that question was, the people that have changed from one public health running to another, it sounds like we're the only ones that are going to be trying to do that from a public organization that's been run by a county district, like a tri-county district, and then moving to a local, as opposed to moving from a contracting organization to a local or some sort of that. So I guess my question is, has any other county gone through this exact change?
No, they haven't.
Okay, so we don't really have any idea how long it'll take.
Well, I think that it's, in terms of the operational pieces and the practicalities of it, I think it's less sort of, I don't know that moving from a public organization to another public organization is really that different in terms of just the operational pieces of things that need to get in place, versus, a county sort of taking it back, for ending their relationship with their contractor and bringing it back in-house to the county. In terms of practicalities about what that entails.
And do you feel that in those cases that the amount, because you had mentioned things like records, that the amount of records would affect the amount of time that would take? You said things like records retention and transferring. Do you think that plays a bigger role in it, or is it, like you said, is it primarily finding the staff and onboarding the staff?
I think it's staff, it's onboarding, it's if there are, I think it's untangling the funding, untangling if there are equipment. I mean, I don't know what the current agreement is with North Central about if you were to, terminate your relationship with them. Do you have to get all new equipment? Do you get equipment from them? How do you, and I don't think it's so much the amount of the records that need to transfer. I mean, my guess is there aren't like truckloads of records for Gilliam County that would need to be brought over, but it's really just sort of working through it, inventorying all of it, accounting for it, it's not insurmountable. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that it is likely to take you more time than you would anticipate.
Members of the public that wants to weigh in, part of this is to give opportunity for folks to give feedback to the court on thoughts on what you heard today before we go into talking about next steps. Anybody? Public comment? So in terms of next steps, it sounds to me
Judge
like,
Campbell,
yeah, go ahead, Les.
Les Ruark again. I would like to suggest that the court, to the extent possible, make available whatever legal counsel's interpretation or writings in this matter are. I know you at times deal with attorney-client privilege, but in this instance, I think the more open that county counsel can be in terms of where he or she may be coming from on the questions that they've already been asked and the ones that are they're apt to be asked in this matter, I think it's going to be important for everyone, for all aspects of the issues involved here. And I just want to make sure that suggestion's out there on the record today. Thank you.
Thanks, Les. Okay, so in terms of next steps, it sounds like we need to explore whether a 190 will work. So it sounds like we need to connect Carrie with the DOJ. Yes. And then simultaneously, I think it might be beneficial for us to maybe reach out to Grant County and maybe some of the other counties. Maybe OHA can help identify who those counties are that have an employee but are contracting out a large amount of services. That makes sense?
Yeah, and a discussion of how that, county employee would, how that structure this way.
How that would look.
Yeah.
I think it might be beneficial to talk to Grant County in particular and see how they're structuring that with CCS.
That can be a big piece of county costs. How that fits in the whole puzzle.
Yes. So does that sound like the next steps on this?
Yeah.
In terms of timing, I mean, I think initially when we were talking to the South Bellevue Health District about this, we were trying to be mindful of when fiscal year started, the 180-day requirement to get out of North, it was all those kind of how would those line up? But I was thinking that really, if the court decided to move forward, we could also look at this being a calendar year change, meaning 2023. So that would give us a year and 2 months, basically, to go through this process. So I just want to say for the record, I'm not like assuming what the court is going to do, but I just wanted to put that in terms of timing.
How big a problem is a calendar change versus a fiscal change?
I mean, what it would require is Nathan and I, when we're putting together the budget, if it's an in-house, assuming that the person would be a county employee and that we can't do the 190, we would need to budget for it, basically. And so we would need to know by next spring that was the intention of the court and to be able to figure out what the funds would look like. And just have that in place. And then, so assuming that the change happened in 2023, that would be the last half of the fiscal year, basically. And so we would budget for about a half a year plus transition costs.
So in all likelihood, based on the conversation today, it will probably be a campaign.
Assuming that the 190 is not, but I would want to hear from DOJ's attorneys on what they think. I would say if it's a 190, that becomes much more complicated, I think, because we're going to have to do an ordinance that, in order to create one, we'd have to do an ordinance by county statute. It takes 90 days to enact that unless we declared an emergency, which theoretically, I think this could be an emergency. But then I'm not sure how it would look. Nathan and I would have to figure out how that 190 would do their budget. Because I would assume their budget would need to be passed by June 30th. So we would have to sort out, even with the 190, how that would look for them to be able to have their budget passed in time for Oregon law that says it has to be enacted by June 30th. I'm not sure how that looks.
Right, and then you would, just to remind you, then you would need to also, they would have to kind of be in place. We'd have to also time any sort of intergovernmental agreement with that governmental entity from OHA's perspective to be able to provide the funding.
So it's complicated, I think, is what we've heard today.
It is complicated.
But I think the discussion with DOJ is the next step to even see what our options are, because if the 190 is off the table, then it's a simpler conversation, honestly. And the budget side is something Nathan and I can do as long as we know the court's intent by springtime.
Yeah.
We can get that ready for the budget committee.
April 1st is always the joke.
Yeah. So, yes, go ahead.
I'm Danny Sperry, and so it does sound like there's a lot more, technical, financial complications that are coming up than we had previously assumed. But I don't want those to impede the continuation of the discussion of getting the public health authority back in Gilliam County. So I still think that the need is there. It's just not going to be quite as easy as we want it to be, or we're hoping it would be. But I do think that it would still be worth it at the end. So I'm glad that we're still discussing continuing, even though it's not going to be as simple as we hoped.
Any additional feedback from the public, or North Central Public Health, or anybody else that wants to weigh in? It sounds like this is just we will continue to have this on the court's agenda as we get more information. So I don't know if we'll be able to make the DOJ conversation happen before the 3rd, but we'll try to make that happen so that we have next steps. But it may not be.
So then it would be December.
It could, unless you guys felt like you wanted to do a special meeting in November.
Which we might need to consider once, if we don't have that answer ahead of time.
Yeah.
Before the November 3rd meeting.
Okay, so to be continued, I guess is the next thing. I will, Dana, are you the best person to connect us with the DOJ?
Yeah, either Andrew or I can. Feel free to reach out, and then we'll make that happen.
Okay, great. I will get you connected with Carrie, who's our attorney, and so you can get the legal beagles in the same room.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Les.
Les Ruark again. I need to ask a basic question here. Maybe I'm kind of getting lost amongst everything, and I certainly appreciate the decision making that still needs to be addressed and made in this matter. But bottom line, isn't there a way the county court could move ahead with the actual bottom line decision as it's looking at it, of bringing public health back into the county, more or less contingent on the ways that that's going to happen in terms of, one, whether it be through the health district on the south side or whether it be a 190, and two, how to best fit the funding of it into things. Can't the court, for instance, as it was looking at doing sometime in November, I guess it was the early part of November, maybe now it's later than that, can't you be looking at making that basic decision? Or am I ahead of things here?
at least I'll speak for me, and the commissioners might have a different, to me, the prospect of adding a county employee has a whole list of ramifications that I would want to, everything from would this employee be union represented to how much, so in terms of how much it will cost us, all of those things are sort of wrapped up in whether this person would be a county employee and how that looks like. So to me, it has ramifications for how much it will actually cost. And so I would like to at least have the answer on whether it is a 190. I'm not sure that would, I will say, I'm not sure that would necessarily stop me. I just think that it's an important piece of information that we should have, because it's basically deciding, in essence, whether we're going to add an employee or not, which is a significant, I think, decision budgetarily.
May I ask how the other two commissioners would feel about it?
When I just think through the cost of the move, it's, it costs the county right now $138,000 this year. How much is it going to cost for an employee? Has that play into this whole package of what we're considering doing and not costing the county any money? What is the real impact when you start looking at it that way?
Yeah, well, they're just not the salary, but there's the impact of the recruiting and the whole structure. There's a cost to all of that as well. Not just.
Hey, thank you, Judge. I appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, so we will we'll continue this discussion. We'll try to get as much information. If I have information from DOJ, we will try to put it back on the agenda on the 3rd. Otherwise, for folks who are interested in this conversation, just as a reminder, we have AOC what would be our second meeting in November. And so we were planning on not only having one meeting in November. That might change if the commissioners decide that we need to do a special meeting. So I'm just sort of flagging this for people. If this is an interest in you, you're going to be one to watch to see. We may have a special meeting in November to talk about next steps. Okay. Anything more on this one? Okay, let's go on to new business. Discussion regarding AirMed Care and Life Flight employee benefits. I off and just remind folks that as part of the new collective bargaining agreement, we had agreed to provide annual memberships to AirMed Care and Life Flight for our union represented employees. Alan's in the process of getting that paperwork submitted, and then the question came up, is the court's intention for this to be a benefit for just the union represented employees, or was there interest in extending it to other employees? So there's sort of two things that I need today. One is I actually need us to approve the contracts with AirMed Care and Life Flight so that we can get those signed and get employees signed up. But the other piece is I needed clarity from you all on who you would like to have that benefit. So there's a couple of options you have. You can decline and just say, nope, this is just for our union represented. You could extend the benefit to all employees, full and part-time, including elected officials. You could extend to all full-time employees, including elected officials, but excluding our part-time folks. Or you could extend to all full-time and part-time employees, but exclude elected officials in management, which would be like Lisa, the chief of staff, our roadmaster. The cost per person is $65 for AirMed Care and $59 for Life Flight. And I will kick it over to you guys to get feedback. What do you think?
Well, at any time that I've been involved or listening, or when we have the bargaining unit negotiate their contract, the benefits package that everybody gets is something that is negotiated. And then we haven't necessarily had, I shouldn't say we, the rest of the employees outside the bargaining unit haven't really had a say in what those benefits are. Is that not correct, Ellen? I mean, the entire staffing gets what has been negotiated. And so I kind of feel that same way about this, is that it's a benefit that's been negotiated, and I think it should be offered to all employees. I think they should.
Yeah, I really.
Not part-time, however. Part-time doesn't get benefits. Anybody that gets benefits.
And I feel like I kind of took ownership of this in the bargaining, and then we kind of held the card on it. But I really don't feel like it was something that represented necessarily negotiated very hard for. It was on the table at first. I don't know how much we talked about that, but it went off the table pretty quick when they were after other things. And I really just think it's a great benefit to Gilliam County employees. It's not that expensive, and we're rural. It's important, and I think that our employees at Gilliam County, represented, non-represented, should get this benefit. And I thought, you know, when I was thinking about it early on, that was just the way I was looking at it. We talked about the cost of each, and there's really not a lot of cost differences. The total cost of the whole package is not that great, so less.
Well, and there's
the non-representative.
There's that whole administrative piece too, where we're changing everybody's pay date. And you didn't get to decide if you were getting your pay date changed or not. It was that, because administratively, everybody needs to be paid on the same day. Well, this is the same thing. How do we pick and choose? Okay, Ellen, this guy gets it and this guy doesn't. And pretty soon she's got a nightmare because she's trying to juggle.
And I respect the fact
who
that she
gets it,
shouldn't
who
have
doesn't.
to do it department by department.
No.
It's approved. Let's do this package.
Yeah, I think so.
So one thing I would throw out for maybe consideration is, I know traditionally we don't extend benefits to our part-time employees, most of them. But I wonder in this case, if given the cost of it, if it's something we might want to consider, just because I think, I mean, we have several who are at 19 and a half hours. It's difficult often to recruit for those part-time positions. And I wonder if something that's a pretty modest benefit, really.
I certainly don't have a problem with that.
Okay, because how many are we talking about, Lisa, in terms of how many are represented in?
26 represented currently.
And then how many do we have non?
So
That
going
this would
on the
impact.
number you sent me the other day, if you include elected officials, we have 54 employees, correct?
But are you asking how many part-time?
Yeah, part and full-time.
I think there was 9. Wasn't there 9?
9 part-time, 9 part-time.
So would that be, is that included in the 54 number?
Yes.
Okay, so 54.
It was
Times
56.
120.
I think it was 56.
Times 124. We're talking about $6,700 for everybody,
Right.
including union employees.
Right. It's going to cost you almost half of that anyway.
Right.
Represented, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right. So what I would need from you all is a motion to extend the benefit. It sounds like you.
Excuse me.
Teddy, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to point out that there are some benefits that are not given to everybody. There are certain benefits that were given to different employees, and the union was not included with regards to sick time. And this was something that was negotiated by the union, and we have to pay dues to have one of the benefits of negotiating a contract. And so I guess I'm just pointing out that everything does not have to be the same across the board. And
maybe not everybody should get the same benefit as the union does because we are paying for that benefit.
I can respect that, but I also believe that this benefit every employee should get.
I would like to suggest that we all get the same benefit of sick time then.
Teddy,
We do now.
so in the union negotiations, we did update the union contract to include what had been put in the employee handbook. That was our first opportunity to bring the represented people in line with the sick leave that the non-represented people had had, and we did that through this negotiation process.
Okay, thank you. I was mistaken on that.
Oh, no, that's fine. It was a little confusing and convoluted, and I hear your other points, but to the point of sick leave, we have brought represented in line with non-represented now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teddy.
Okay, so if you wanted to move forward, commissioners, I would need a motion on who you would like to extend the benefit to. And then I need a second motion to approve the membership agreements themselves so that I can get those signed. So Ellen can get everybody signed up.
I would make a motion to extend the Medicare and lifeline benefit to option two, all employees, including part-time employees and elected officials.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we extend the AirMed Care and Lifelight benefit to all employees, including part-time employees and elected officials. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I then just need a motion to approve the membership agreements themselves. And
I move to approve the membership agreements with AirMed Care Network and Lifelight Network as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the membership agreements with AirMed Care Network and Lifelight Network as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that one is done. 6.2, discussion regarding the batch plant loader repairs. Did we get this straightened out, Teresa? Maybe?
No, well,
Kind of?
according to the agreement that we have with the contractor, they are to take care of the maintenance and repairs on the equipment that they are using. And so when the roadmaster brought this to me, he was unaware of that. So I dug up the agreement, sent it off to everybody, and then Dewey sent it to the contractors. They want to go ahead, and the lease is expired too. They never got back to me in September of 2020, whether or not they wanted to, but they have continued to pay the treasurer's office every month for everything. So at this point, we need they want a new contract. And I have not heard back whether or not they are going to pay for this estimate or not. But according to the contract, they paid for that.
The contract that we don't have signed.
The contract that has been
That
expired. It expired September 30th of 2020.
And they just wanted to extend it.
They want to extend it
Right.
with the same terms as it currently has.
Okay, so commissioners, what I'm thinking is let's get that contract renewed. And we can get it back, I think, on for the November 3rd meeting. And then let's have the discussion with them about, okay, now that we've done the contract.
My question is, are they even using the loader?
Yes, they
Have
are.
they been? Okay, well then, if they're using it,
Yes,
okay.
yes, they are
Right?
using the facility. Yeah.
Because it is a very good piece of equipment.
So I'll
I'm not
bring
sure
it
it's worth this.
back. I think we'll probably just do a simple amendment to extend when it ends, and we'll probably just stick that on consent agenda for November 3rd, if that works for you guys.
Sounds good.
Okay.
He isn't on, is he?
I don't see him.
I don't see him.
I think my question just was, is that piece of equipment worth the $4,200 to fix it? Because in the past we discussed it really was.
Yes, and Dewey said, and I put it in the item briefing, he said, if we don't repair
It's
the
scrap
flinch,
iron.
it's scrap metal. So it's whether or not, you know, the contractors might choose not to, because it's too much, they might
Just
have
have one.
one piece laying around in their
Right.
arsenal, you know, who
Okay.
knows, but yeah.
All right. I guess we don't have to repair it today.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's talk about meeting locations. Let me just say that I apologize. When we first put this together, I did not anticipate the meeting would last that long, this long. I thought we would be meeting for maybe a half an hour for a quick update. And I thought, why are we driving to Arlington for an hour and a half for a half-hour meeting? So I want to apologize that Teresa had asked me, where do we have it? And when I looked at the agenda, we've added some stuff since then. So if
Some of our discussions were pretty in-depth.
they were longer than I had anticipated. So if we want to go back to going back and forth, we can do that. I do want to note though, it is really difficult for us to kind of manage who's on the board and the Zoom. And I wonder, I would like feedback maybe from the public on whether they think that plays a role in whether they will participate or not when we're down there. Because to me, being able to have people up on the board and the fact that it's all on Zoom, I question whether people are engaging more in person or if they're just listening in while they're at their computers anyway.
How would you suggest you get that public input? I mean, we don't get a lot of participation anyway, and I guess I just think it's important to be consistent to all the residents of Gilliam County. I thought it was a good idea to show the north end that the county court is listening to both sides of the county. Particularly, we got things going on in the county right now. I bet we would have had some people at the county meeting down there today if we'd had it down there. I didn't realize it wasn't going to be there until I got this morning. I had to look at that part of it.
Yeah, that was my biggest issue was I didn't know until I actually looked at the agenda
I have it in
to
my
tell
mind.
me where I was going.
Got it.
We weren't given any heads up.
Got it. I apologize for that, guys. But I think I just want to make sure that we're not, here's my hesitancy, is that I'm packing up staffers. And when we have our staff meeting, we're bringing them all down to Arlington for what is often nobody attends. And I understand why they went back and forth before we had Zoom, because they would never see us then. But I question whether for most people, if they would rather just hop on and watch and be able to see the presentation and, all of those things. I mean, we can't, when we're down in Arlington, we just don't have a setup. If somebody's coming in remotely, I don't have a way for people to be able to see the PowerPoint presentation. We don't have the equipment down there. I mean, I will say, in full disclosure, my preference is to have it here because if we have something that's not working, we have Kelly down the hall. We have, technologically wise, it is much easier for us to set up a system that our folks are familiar with and that we are able to unlock the door. We've had that problem before where we show up and people have forgotten we're coming and we can't get into a building. I'm throwing this out there that I understand the need to engage in both, but I'm wondering if Zoom captures that ability.
Zoom does make a big difference.
Zoom affects everything, but I'm just going to stick where I'm at because I think it's important that the county court make the effort for both ends of the county. I also think that we need to take into consideration the Bronco's building because they're in the process of putting in a sound barrier right now, and they actually have put some on the ceiling, so we're going to have some of them in place before tomorrow's historical society annual meeting, and it's made an unbelievable difference. And I believe they have the equipment down there. But it's a consistency deal, the consistency, people get to understand that it's there.
Well, I think that is another thing is people just weren't used to it
You haven't
happening.
done it
But
long enough to even consistently, really, as slow as we're moving on to really get the feeling that we're having a meeting. I just think it's a
But-
very important thing.
And speaking back to that though, is there we are available on Zoom and people that we would like to be interacting with us, that we've invited to interact with us, haven't even gotten on Zoom. So that's an issue too. You know,
So-
it's, we're available.
I just.
It's not like we're not
I'm
available.
not gonna be on the board that, well, Arlington doesn't want to participate, so we're not gonna do our part. I mean, I think our part, if they participate or not, they do.
Well, how about this? How about we do a pilot and we go there for a couple of months, and if nobody shows up, then we have it here and say that your option is Zoom, because it costs the county money
Yes.
to go down there to have an empty room where no one is sitting,
It doesn't I mean.
because the three of us are sitting in a car for an hour and a half rather than doing county business. And when I have other people who need to participate in the conversation, they are getting in a car and driving an hour and a half, and the county is paying. Well, yeah, but I mean, for everybody else, the county is paying each of those people an hour and a half, and the
Well,
gas, and the,
But that logic could relocate the whole road department, though, right? I mean, they're driving all over too.
but they have
It's just
to.
a cost of doing business.
We actually don't have to do
Well, a lot
that.
of those
and
costs are
do
there
business.
regardless of whether you have it there or there. Some are just in place costs.
But it's-
inconvenience.
But it's not, because I have staff that need to do stuff at home, here, in the courthouse. And
Sure.
they
It's
can't do that when they're in the car. So I'm just saying, from an administrative standpoint, we spend a lot of money going to an empty meeting room. And,
Well, this one is nice full.
yeah, but I didn't send staff to drive an hour and a half to go to the meeting.
This one isn't always full either, so your logic is not going there if nobody showed up. And not everybody, people don't show up there either.
But I don't have the cost here. That's the difference. I
You
don't,
don't have the driving cost. right?
yeah, I don't lose an hour and a half for every staff member that has to drive, because they are assigned to this building. So the county doesn't pay. So I'm just saying, it's a frustration of mine that we're spending money to go to an empty room. I'm happy if they want to engage in Arlington with us, if they show up to our meetings. But I will say, technologically, it's a lot more difficult to do it. We spend a lot of money in the car to go to an empty room. So I'm open to it, but I would ask, if no one is showing up to our meetings, that we bring them back to the courthouse full
Didn't
time.
they formerly go quarterly to Arlington?
Yes.
Is that,
Yes,
That was
rather
my
than
request
monthly, it
as
was
well.
quarterly.
Okay.
Yeah. They formally went quarterly, but when we were doing that, almost everybody that showed up was from Condon. So we were asking people from Condon to drive to the meeting because nobody in
I
Arlington
don't like
was.
the discussion of Arlington economy. It causes more north-south divide and bring it up. We should not identify one and the other all the time. We should say Gilliam County. Trying to do the things that I think we need to do to work on eliminating that being a problem in our county. We live around north side, south side stuff all the time. What can we do as county court to try to alleviate that battle?
I can't do anything but agree with that totally, because I really do get sick and tired of.
You guys don't live in that end, so you don't understand what we hear pretty much on a daily basis.
I mean, I get it, but we go down there and they don't show up.
Okay, well, let's just agree that we will continue for 2 more months. And then we'll see what happens and we can discuss it again.
Perfect.
Because I totally also understand your position in having to bundle up all of this technology, and we don't have the big screen, and it isn't nearly as efficient on that end as it is here.
That's just my point, is I'm happy to go there if people feel it's of value. I'm not sure they feel it's of value if they're not showing up to the
We picked a
meeting.
really bad day not to be there.
I believe that goes into, we will be there tomorrow, right, Chris?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Do you guys want to give an update on, Les had asked if we could give an update on what the county is doing regarding the emergency managers at the north end.
Not emergency managers, but.
Or emergency services. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Emergency
Pat's up to speed. Chris has been working on it, but, you know, I mean, we're talking about an elected board, North Central or North Health District. Sorry, but that's, anyway, our North community is in stress, and our emergency responders, mainly ambulance EMTs, have, you know, they're going through some hurt right now, and they need the opportunity to speak and be heard. And so we've facilitated, I guess, a meeting for tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the fire station for a community to get together and begin the healing process of putting that organization back together. And with the goal in mind to have our ambulance operational by the end of the day, or at least by the next morning. So that's kind of where we're at. Chris sent out the community meeting notice, and I've talked to some key people that I need to be there to be part of the process. Pat is one of those persons to represent the county, but obviously anybody's welcome. It's not just singly, you know, this person, but I've talked to the health board representative, EMT representative, dispatch, my office, and anybody else who wants to be there. Chris should be there as an emergency manager and different things like that. So
again, for folks that are listening in that want to take part in that community discussion, Gary, say again, it's at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
tomorrow.
October 21st, tomorrow at the fire station in Arlington.
Great. Questions, comments on that piece? Anybody from the public have questions or comments about the community meeting tomorrow? I do not see anybody. Okay. Okay, let's go on to other announcements. Next meeting is going to be November 3rd. As I mentioned earlier, we are planning a work session on housing at 2 o'clock, because I was not sure how long our agenda will be on the 3rd, and so I wanted to give a little bit of a lunch break. And that will be here at the courthouse. Sherry, what do you got going on?
Well, we had the Tri-County Court meeting, which was fun to have everybody in the room again. They, Wheeler and Sherman came, and we all attended. It was informational and nice to be back in that. I have Norcore tomorrow at 10, so I will go to the 9 o'clock meeting, and then I'll have to leave to go to Norcore meeting at 10. We're still on Zoom. Capco is Friday the 29th, and that is also still on Zoom. And right now, I guess that's what's going on.
Pat, what do you got?
To attend the Tri-County Court meeting, first one. Had North Central Public Health, of course, this month at our board meeting, and to the North Gilliam County Health District meeting. Attend the Frontier Regional 911 meeting yesterday, trying to get up to speed and educate myself on that convoluted process, or not process, but systems that are in place through Frontier.
Good luck. Gary and I have been on that board for a long time, and I don't think we get it.
It's interesting, and I'm learning a lot. And asking some questions. I have a lot. Other than that, we have our situation in Arlington, which has taken a lot of time this week especially, and hope we can get some resolution of that ASAP. I talked to 4 of the 5 board members last night, one who has resigned, and who called me 4 or 5 times yesterday, and just the urgency of getting something in place down there now, I think is critical. So that's been a mess. Thanks.
So I do have a question related to that. Maybe Gary can answer. If there is an ambulance called today, what happens?
I asked that question a little bit ago.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, so I had to work it out with 911, obviously, that they have to page that call to get it out of the center and to the folks that are responsible. The person in charge of the ambulance at the moment will answer that call and decide if there are personnel to respond or if we need mutual aid.
Okay.
So they'll decide on who to call.
And how does it, just so we know, because I think this might be just helpful to understand how mutual aids work. Do then they just call Boardman, Condon? How does it?
So she'll direct dispatch to please page out Boardman, please page out Condon, or Sherman, or whomever.
Whoever's closest.
Or
available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just thought that might be helpful for the public to understand that there are systems in place if there's a call today, that there are potentially other agencies that could respond.
Right. They've discussed that and have somewhat of a plan. However, with the way most entities are, they lack resources or are busy in their own jurisdiction and can't leave it unprotected, so they need to stay home. So issues.
Campbell?
Yep, go ahead, Les.
Trustee Rourke, may I ask the sheriff a question?
Sure.
Gary, can you estimate at this point what the increased response times are that are involved here, that are now in play, given if a mutual aid entity were the one having to respond? I know it depends on the locale that's asked, but just, is there an average that you can say what the increase of response time would be?
No, actually. It just depends on if it's, Ione, Hepner, Boardman, Arlington, Sherman County, and, if they're on a call, returning from a call, where their personnel are located at the time, if they're volunteer, which most of them are. So there's a lot of factors that determine that time.
I certainly understand that. But is it accurate or fair to say that there would be a significant increase in, obviously, in response time?
I think that's obvious.
Judge, may I throw something else out here too, I guess?
Go ahead, Les.
As you know, I emailed you and the commissioners and Gary and a couple of others a suggestion that was made on the cuff yesterday when I was headed out to the tractor, and I still think it's worthy of some consideration, but I'd suggested to you that it might be worthwhile checking in with the governor's intergovernmental coordinator for this area, Nate Stiles, and asking him to approach the governor with the thought being that perhaps she could find a way of declaring some sort of state of emergency, which would enable the state to step in to some degree for the immediate time anyway, in helping to make sure there was the local ambulance crew available.
As I think way off base.
And I'm wondering what you guys are thinking along those lines is about that suggestion.
I think OHA has reached out to us and we've told them to let us
It's a
see
local
what
issue.
happens tomorrow and then, yeah.
Yeah, so Chris, do you want to come a little bit closer? So Chris
yeah.
has an update on that.
So OHA has actually reached out to us today, and we have actually told them what we have planned for tomorrow. And so they're just kind of sitting back, letting us see what happens with the meeting and how things progress tomorrow morning. And they are willing to help us out however we need to. There are routes and avenues that we could potentially take if we were to try and get some personnel. But at this point, we wanted to just wait and see what happens in the morning.
Well, that's good to hear, Chris. I appreciate that. I don't think it's all that far-fetched an idea, really, because when you consider what's happening right now in the last few days down on the north coast with the agencies struggling with the impacts of COVID and declaring essentially emergencies for, 5 different ambulance districts, based on the fact that they also are facing no EMTs available to run their routes. I just think looking at it more of a 360-degree approach on the governor's part might be the way to encumber a greater interest on the public's part, because bottom line, when you get right down to it here, we're not only looking at the obvious elected board's decision-making, but we're also looking at the succession issue involved with bringing on new volunteers and providing the degree of incentives we need to be keeping the good folks that we have. And I know you guys are looking at it as best you can, but boy, I can't emphasize to you as just one individual sitting out here at Rock Creek, the importance it's going to be to bring back the crew that we've had and make them feel comfortable with what they obviously are not feeling comfortable with at this point. Thank you.
Celeste?
I just have a couple things.
Go ahead, Chris.
North Central Public Health, booster shots. So we potentially, because of CDC approval and then maybe FDA approval by the end of the week, we have Martha McGinnis has been working with me, and we have November 2nd and November 30th set up for the half-dose Moderna, and well, actually all 3 of them. We'll have Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J all available at the fairgrounds from 2 to 7.
Both nights are in, or both times are in?
Yes, in Condon, November 2nd, November 30th in Condon, November 16th in Arlington. November 2nd and 30th will be at the fairgrounds from 2 to 7, and November 16th will be at the Gronquist building from 2 to 7. And then we will look and see what our percentages of people that have shown up to get the booster, and decide to potentially have another day in Arlington. Because then Murray's has also said that they would give the booster shots down here as well. And so Condon people have another access to, down here where Arlington doesn't. So we could potentially set up another date in December down in Arlington.
So did you say December, November 2nd and 30th?
Yes, for Condon, and November 16th for Arlington. And they're all 2 to 7. I asked for the afternoon into, when people get off work, so. And I'm hoping that we can get these soon enough that we get the people here in Condon so they don't have to go to Fossil like they did at the first, with the first and second shots, yeah.
And Summit Springs, I understand, has already gotten
They
their
were.
boosters.
John Murray, bless his heart, volunteered and took the Pfizer booster shots over to the in-care residents and got them all taken care of about a week or 2 ago. So they're
Are
done.
these drop-in or appointment?
Well, the poster is going to have a phone number, NCPHD's phone number, and a website for you to go on and register an appointment. But we are taking walk-ins as well, because there's a lot of people that we're doing both. And I told Martha, I said, I know that there's criteria that they want us to follow, just like we had to with the first and second, with all that stuff. But I want to put a needle in an arm when somebody walks in the door. I don't care. I just don't think, I've been talking to people and telling them a lot, hey, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I've had a lot of people saying, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting that booster shot. So I'm like, okay, so maybe you're not going to have as many people as I thought, to get that booster shot. But, right now.
Anybody that got sick, I think is like,
Exactly.
no, thank you.
But we have, we have those people, with the J&Js, and again, their efficacy rate has gone down, and they're saying that, well, right now, they're saying that if you got a J&J, you don't necessarily have to go get a booster J&J. They're saying that you want your efficacy rate to go up, you could potentially get a Pfizer or Moderna, and that's gonna put you at a higher percentage than getting a second dose of J&J, so it'll be up to the people, so. Anyhow, that's what we got going.
Anything else?
Not for me.
All right,
Anything else for the good of the order?
not, it is 12:09 and I will adjourn the meeting.